Health reform is law. The debate over whether or not to adopt it is over. Democrats won, Republicans lost. Which does not mean that Republicans can't still be opposed to health reform. It just means the way they're opposed is changing. All the made-up stuff about death panels and secret plots to kill old people and secret plots to kill veterans and special needs children, those have passed their shelf life at this point. Since as the reforms go into effect and no death panels convene, kind of loses its impact to say they're coming, right? Well, now the fashionable way to show off how opposed you are to health reform is with a lawsuit. Filing lawsuits against the government alleging that health reform violates the Constitution. Today, the Republican governor of Georgia, Sonny Perdue, went so far as to announce that he will appoint a special attorney general whose sole job will be to sue the government over health reform on behalf of the state of Georgia. You might be asking yourself, why does Governor Perdue of Georgia need a new attorney general just for this one very special lawsuit? It's because when he asked the real attorney general of Georgia, Democrat Thurbert Baker, to file this lawsuit, Mr. Baker looked into the matter and determined that it would be a futile exercise. It would be a giant waste of Georgia taxpayers' money. The real attorney general of Georgia said plainly and publicly that there is, quote, no viable legal basis to challenge the health reform law. But get me a new attorney general then. The purported legal basis for these latest anti-health reform lawsuits, is that they say it's unconstitutional to require everybody to have health insurance. Now, even as Republicans really want to support these lawsuits, this is an awkward argument for them to make. Let me tell you why. Take Mitt Romney, for example. Mitt Romney is trying really hard to be against the mandate in health reform that you have to get health insurance. The problem is, Mitt Romney's own health reform plan that he passed in Massachusetts, it has the mandate too. Up until now, his tiptoe around this has been that the mandate from a state government is okay, but the mandate from the federal government, well, that's obviously evil and wrong and unconstitutional for some reason. Then the Democratic National Committee unearthed and circulated this piece of video from Mitt Romney from the 2008 election cycle.
Although you've backed away from mandates on a national basis.
No, I like mandates. The mandates work.
Beg your pardon? I didn't know you were going to admit that.
No, absolutely.
You like mandates.
Let me tell you what kind of mandates I like, Fred, which is this.
The ones you come up with.
That, of course, was what Mitt Romney thought about a federal mandate back when he was running for president, before all the cool kids from the Republican Party were filing lawsuits claiming that a federal mandate is unconstitutional. But Mitt Romney is not alone. He never is. Mitt Romney is not alone in suddenly claiming that he believes requiring people to have insurance is unconstitutional, despite a very clear record that speaks otherwise. The fact is, the individual health insurance mandate is a Republican idea. Republicans came up with it. But as soon as the Democrats decided they agreed with the Republicans on that, Republicans changed their mind and decided it was horrible, awful, and unconstitutional. In 1993, Republican Senators Chuck Grassley of Iowa and Orrin Hatch of Utah were co-sponsors of a health reform proposal, a Republican health reform proposal that included an individual mandate. But if you ask them what they think of the individual mandate today, now that Democrats have adopted it, now that Democrats have adopted their position on it, now apparently they are absolutely opposed to their own idea. Just this afternoon, NBC's Andrea Mitchell called Senator Grassley to account for his brand new take on the individual mandate he used to support.
You were one of the people who conceived the idea of the individual mandate back in 1993. You and the late Senator Chafee were trying to come up with an alternative, compromises in Hillary Clinton's health care proposals. Was it okay then, but now it's unconstitutional? Or do you think these attorneys general are wrong about challenging the legality, the constitutionality of the individual mandate aspects of this?
No, I think they're right then, and I think the only difference between 1993 and the year now, if it was unconstitutional today, it was unconstitutional in 1993, but I don't think anybody gave it much thought.
We didn't really think about it back then when it was our idea. That's his answer. But now that it's the Democrats' idea, and I think about it now, it's totally unconstitutional, obviously. Incidentally, Senator Hatch, this amazes me. It's like they've coordinated this. Senator Hatch is offering up more or less the same totally inexplicable explanation.
Back on Hillary Care, they had a mandate in there, and I didn't realize it. I didn't pay any attention to it. We were trying to defeat Hillary Care. But the more I studied it since then, the more I've looked at it since then, the more I've come to the conclusion that it would be absolutely unconstitutional to force people to buy something they don't want to buy.
No. The mandate was your idea. It's a good thing they didn't pass your own proposal back then when you proposed it, Senator. Turns out you hadn't really thought about just how unconstitutional it was back then when it was your idea that you didn't know anything about. Joining us now is Ezra Klein, staff writer for The Washington Post. Ezra, thanks very much for coming on the show. It's good to have you here.
Good evening, Rachel.
Let me just ask you first about the historic thing that has just happened in the House of Representatives. Democrats get 220 votes. Is it actually done? Is there anything going to sneak up out here, or are we done?
No, we seem pretty done. I mean, for the moment anyway. We'll be back at this in a couple of years, and we'll certainly be talking about it in the election. But for now, our long, national, boring conversation is finally over.
Well, let me actually ask you about the surprise that this all sort of happened suddenly today. The Senate looked like it was on the long, slow road until well past 2 a.m. last night when they were dragging this out and dragging this out and dragging this out. And then today, ping, pong, ping, it's done. They kick it over to the House, ping, pong, ping, it's done before even an hour of my show is over. How come it wrapped up so quickly?
It's a wonder what winning does for Democrats, isn't it? Back a couple weeks ago, back a couple months ago, everything the Republicans said terrified the Democrats. The Republicans would say, well, maybe the Senate won't act on it, and House Democrats would feel a little shiver run down their spines. And then it turned out that they can actually do this. They can actually legislate. And more to the point, and this is, I think, the big psychological change between this week and 2 weeks ago, they like it. They like what it feels like when they do something enormous for the American people. And they didn't want to let it stop. And so when it happened to be the case that we had a minor glitch when it went to the Senate, the House said, oh, yeah, fine, we'll work on it. This is worth taking one more vote to finish.
When the president went out on the stump in Iowa today and essentially campaigned and campaigned on health reform, begged Republicans to please campaign on repeal, do you think that was a sign of things to come? I mean, Republicans were saying for months now, you're never going to hear the end of health reform in this election. I'm starting to feel like that may be true, but it's going to be Democrats talking about it, not Republicans.
Well, I never put too much stock in advice one party gives the other party. I didn't when it was Republicans giving it to Democrats and not now the other way. I will say that I think Republicans would not be wise to spend the election on health care for the simple reason that, in general, health care is a Democratic issue. When they're up there saying, listen, we don't want to cut Medicare, and they start getting the ads of all the times they've given it a shot, people start wondering, well, who do I trust on Medicare? It won't go good for them. I think you'll see them trying to talk about unemployment, not the giant historic health care legislation that by the fall is going to be delivering rebate checks to seniors.
Meanwhile, all of these attorneys general and potential Republican presidential candidates and would-be sort of Republican national stars are all supporting these lawsuits against health reform. Do any of these lawsuits stand a real chance of succeeding? If they, in a fantasy world, if they did succeed, would it have any real impact in practical terms?
No, but it's fascinating to watch them all pile up. It's sort of like when everybody comes and pushes the elevator button one after the other, as if more people come in makes it more unconstitutional in this case. If they manage to do this, putting aside the fact that the legal basis for it is unlikely, it also wouldn't be important. It would not repeal health care reform. It would not undermine the bill fatally. The Democrats would have to make a slight change to the individual mandate such that instead of putting a penalty on you, it would instead simply bar you from taking advantage of the subsidies and protections offered by the bill. It would not be that hard. Some people wanted them to go that route anyway. But what's been amazing about this is that even the folks, it's fine for the fringes to do this, for ambitious attorney generals to do this, but the folks who are supposed to hold up that moderate center, the Olympia Snows, the Chuck Grassley's of the world, supposed to be the bulwark between Fox News and the rest of America, they fell on this. I mean, put Grassley aside, who supported this back in the day. Olympia Snow voted for it when it left the Senate Finance Committee. That was 2009, not 1993. And suddenly she's on board for questions about its constitutionality. The grown-ups in the Republican Party have sat down, and that's not good.
Ezra Klein, staff writer with the Washington Post. It's great to have you on the show, particularly on this big historic vote night. Thanks a lot, Ezra.
Thank you, Rachel.